Great day, great day. Welcome to Logic Lives. Today we're going to talk about interviewing, everyone's favorite thing to do. And in particular, we're going to talk about two different aspects of interviewing and give some tips on how to become a better interviewee. Not interviewer, but interviewee. And so there's two parts of interview, and one is the physical aspect of the interview, and then two is the mental approach that you take with the interview. And people struggle at both, but we'll break those down. So the first part, as far as the physical piece, is be prepared for your interview. Know where you're going to be interviewing and arrive on time. Can't stress the importance of that. Making sure that you are on time. Remember, you're trying to separate yourself from people. And if you can't show up on time to something that's supposedly important to you, then why would someone take the time to hire you if they need you to be dependable at work? So make sure that you understand, scout the area, and know where you're going and be there 20 minutes early. Second thing about the physical piece is a lot of people ask me the question of what clothes should I wear? You want to dress your best. Again, you're trying to impress people. So regardless of what type of job you're applying for, dress to impress. Other thing is come with a resume, because a lot of folks submit their resume online and they assume that the recruiter or the person that's going to interview you has a copy, which they most likely do. But again, you want to show dependability and that you're prepared, because that's what people want to hire, people that are prepared and willing to go the extra mile. So come with a resume. Actually come with probably 4 or 5, because you don't know how many people may be interviewing you, and it's always good to have a backup. Can't stress the importance of that. But a couple of other little pieces that you want to do is thank people for the interview. I've interviewed over 1,000 people, and I will tell you 99% of people do not thank people in advance of the interview. That makes them feel that you are different, you're being detailed, and that's what they want to hire. The other thing is, after the interview, send them a thank you for the interview. Again, 99% of people don't thank people in advance of an interview. I could tell you that 95% of people don't thank someone after they've done the interview. All right, we talked about the physical piece. Now let's talk about the mental piece, because this is the most challenging. A lot of people get nervous and they fumble over their words and they talk themselves out of even trying to interview for a different type of position. So I'll talk to you about a couple of different techniques to help you with this. One, a lot of people get nervous in interviews because they have to think off the top of their head, and that scares them, because most people struggle with coming up with words on the spot. So when they get asked the question, they take a moment and pause and then try to find a good example to give, and that really causes confusion in the brain. So you want to prepare in advance of your interview and figure out what types of questions that this recruiter may be asking you. There are usually 2 types of questions. One, tell me a time when, and that's a behavioral type question, or describe a time when, behavioral type question. Or the other is tell me what you would do, or scenario what you would, and how you would handle that scenario. Something. So the behavioral type questions, tell me a time when or describe a time. The way you want to answer those is in advance. You don't want to wait till the interview for someone to ask you a question and then have to try to think of that scenario. Think about the position that you're applying for and scenarios that you can anticipate that recruiter or the person interviewing you may ask of you. And think of maybe 4 or 5 different scenarios that you could apply to different types of questions. So if someone asks you a question about, tell me a time you found a data error, that scenario that you already have been planning in your head in advance, you already have it, and then you could just tailor your answer to the question that they ask. And your scenario can go a lot of different ways. And if you can think of these scenarios in advance, it'll make you a little more confident, because you'll be ready to tailor your answer based off the scenario that you have already practiced. So if you're getting asked behavioral types questions, there are certain things you want to make sure that you're doing in answering these questions, and this will make you feel more comfortable too, because talk about scenarios and how you practice those in advance, but you want to be specific in the situation. So it's a situation that you had to tackle, not something that you would tackle, or you know that you would if you had this scenario. It's something that you've actually done. So what is the specific scenario that you face based off the question that's asked you? And then what did you have to do? So what were you tasked to do with that situation? Then what was the action or how did you go about that task, and be very specific and detailed in these. And then what was the reason that you took that action, and ultimately what was the result? So if you think about it, it's kind of the STAR. You hear it, STAR, and then add an extra R at the end. Situation, be specific. What was the task? What was the action? What was the reason? And then what was the outcome? What was the result of that scenario, or what you had to do? And that's a great way to break down the question to make sure that you cover in detail the scenario that's being asked of you. When you think about each section, make sure that you're detailed in each one of those sections. When you set the stage and you start breaking down your scenario, make sure that you're specific in each one of those categories, and use the bullet point format, because that'll help prevent you from over talking or just going in circles. And bullet point format is be very concise in terms of what you're trying to describe, instead of trying to use a lot of filler words. The other part of being mental, and we're talking about preparing for the interview, is take time to practice. We talked about finding your scenarios and practicing your scenarios. Practice answering those with family members. And if you're scared, that's good, because that's probably going to mimic the feeling you have when you're in the interview. So continuously practice these scenarios that you've ingrained in your head, and how to change that scenario to answer whatever type question that interviewer asks you. And then last but not least, in terms of the mental approach, is you have to realize that the worst thing that can happen is you don't get the job, and you don't have the job. So there's nothing really that's going to happen to you that hasn't already happened to you. The only thing you could do is benefit. So take your time, calm down, make sure that you get into a really good space, be prepared, and that's going to help you overcome those nerves. Most interviewers do not hold the fact that you are nervous against you, as long as you're able to communicate and articulate your answer, and it's a really good, detailed, and specific answer. That's what most people look for. Make sure that you're prepared, detailed, and you do the physical, thanking people for the interview, thanking them afterwards, making sure you arrive on time, dressed the part, and that will help you bring a resume, and that will help you in terms of being more successful in landing that job. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Hopefully you learned something, and if you do, make sure you like and subscribe.